And there we are. Excellent. So we'll do a little bit of an introduction here. Yeah, as Rick said, tonight we have Mr. Bob Heil, K9EID, in our presence. Bob has played pretty much an outsized role in the history of both amateur radio and live music production, sound production, music recording. His company, Heil Sound, invented the technology that underpins stadium-sized concerts. They designed custom sound systems for the Grateful Dead, The Who, ZZ Top, others. Before that, everyone was playing through high school PA systems and no one could hear anything. If you've ever seen the footage of the Beatles at Shea Stadium, yeah, no one can hear nothing. Until Bob's company came around and made some really, really big speakers so everybody could hear things clearly. He invented the talk box, a guitar effect you can hear on songs by Pink Floyd, Joe Walsh, Steely Dan, Bon Jovi, Motley Crue, and more. He was first licensed as an amateur radio operator in 1956, and he's made his mark on our hobby as an operator, podcaster with his Ham Nation podcast, an author. I think he's got 5 or 6 books to his name, and his company manufactures headsets and microphones that many hams love as part of their rigs. So tonight, Bob has agreed to speak to our club about the science of audio. This is a topic that he is perhaps uniquely suited to educate us on. So please, everybody from KWARC, welcome Bob K9EID to the meeting. And Bob, take it away.
Okie dokie. Audio okay for you? Picture all right? Looking
so.
good.
I think so.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I love coming to club meetings. I think this is like number 252 that I've done since the pandemic started in 2020 of February. I love clubs. It's really the lifeblood of our fraternity. But the problem is COVID just shut everybody down, but Zoom has made it possible, and I appreciate you having me here. So we'll get through a few things. I have so many subjects. Some of the 200 plus that I've been back 2 and 3 times because they pick out a subject and we really just focus on that. But I'll give you a little bit of rundown here before we get into some of the adjusting radios and antennas and stuff. But I started when I was 12 years old. My parents bought me a Hammond organ, which was very expensive, and they weren't wealthy people. But it started my life. I'd been playing the accordion, but right across the street from where I took my lessons was Walter Ash. And I would go over there after the lessons and nose around at all the knobs and dials. And I was fascinated as a 12-year-old kid. Well, I went on and I taught myself through listening to George Wright records and all of that. But I got a job when I was 14 years old playing in a restaurant, and I would drive my 54 Plymouth. I had a very special license to drive it just to work and back. And I had a lot of fun, but I was making a lot of money as a kid playing in these restaurants. In 56, I got a job at the Fox Theater in St. Louis. The organist there needed a substitute to help him. But the reason I tell you all of this, what really happened to young Bob Heil, at the Fox, they had not played that organ in 20 years. And there were about 3,500 pipes from 1 inch to 32 foot. They had to be voiced and tuned. Tuning's no big deal. Voicing was everything. You had to learn to listen. And a lot of people don't know how to listen. They just hear. Listening is dissecting all the different harmonics, all of the distortions it's laying underneath all of the sounds. And I didn't realize that much later in life, it was going to be the basis of 2 of my careers. Well, also in that year, I went back to Walter Ash and I bought a Harvey Wells and an SX99. And of course, as I said, I was making some good money as a kid, and away I went. I just fell in love with ham radio. And at the time I got on the air, it was 1956, late September. What was interesting, I didn't know I'm a new ham. I figured, wow, this is great. 6 meters, it was open 24/7 because it was the largest sunspot cycle. That next 11 years was amazing. I'd come home from playing the theater at 11, 12 o'clock at night. The band was wide open. But I love to build. I had a lot of time. I only worked 4 hours playing, and I love to build. You'll notice on the left side of that picture, there's a little blue box. I had been on maybe 3 weeks. And here's another one a year later. You see that blue box again. Man, I wish I would. I wish I had the box. I don't know what happened to it. I built myself a 2E26 6-meter transmitter. I had read about it in QST, and I went down to Walter Ash, and away we went. Of course, Gonsets were really big in those days. But I was listening along one night, and oh my gosh, I heard the worst sounding signal ever. I thought, what is wrong with this guy? It was all distorted and so on. Now, we're on 6 meters in 1956. And next night he was back. I thought, okay, I'll get up nerve and call him. And I did. Now, you got to remember, in those days, most of us were crystal controlled. We didn't have VFOs or transceivers. So that's why you'll still hear some of us old codgers when we call CQ, K9EID, and tuning, because I might be up here and you're listening down here, whatever. So you got to tune around if somebody's answering you. And sometimes there's 3 or 4 people answering you. But anyway, so much fun. I answered this guy. And I had pushed a button on my SX99. I hardly knew how to operate it. And I hit the BFO button, and wait a minute, that's some of that single sideband stuff that I'd been reading about in QST. On 6 meters, wasn't to be. Barely was sideband on 20 meters. Well, I answered the guy, and he was so amazed that I heard him and come back. And so we would visit each night. I was helping him because he had built this 6-meter sideband transmitter. Little did I know it was one of just the very few first ones. And he needed somebody to help him as he was adjusting and so on. I was fascinated by this. Well, I told him I come into St. Louis to play the Fox at least 3 or 4 times a week, and I have time. The movie was 3 hours, and then you play the organ in between for about 8 minutes. So I went to hear him, to see him. I wanted to see what he had going, and wow, it was quite something. He gave me the address. He said, "Stop by my work address." I rolled up in front of that address, and it was KMOX radio. Larry Burroughs, K0DGE, was the chief engineer. He was one of the very first 6-meter sideband stations. He was an incredible mentor to me. And I just cannot tell you how much he taught me. And I said, would you build me one of those sideband transmitters? That sounds like fun. No, I can't do that. But I'll teach you how. And he did. He gave me a laundry list to go over to Walter Ash. I bought a Central Electronics 10B. That's the first single sideband transmitter. And we'll get into that in just a little bit. He gave me the laundry list. And that was a kit. I put that together. I had a Millen grid dip meter because we had to wind the coils, and then a chassis and some power supply parts in the 6U8. And I built a 36 megacycle oscillator with his guidance. And what do you got with 14 and 36? 6 meters. The station grew really quick. And one of the things that I like to tell some of the guys, you see down in the right part of that, there's 2 black boxes with round dials on them. Those were transmitters from a B-29. And after the war, for a good 20 years, and even today, but especially for about 20 years, the surplus market was fantastic. You could buy all kinds of pieces and parts. And Wes Shum, who started and owned Central Electronics, he had a little description of how you buy one of these for $5, and turn it into a VFO. That was amazing. And of course, with the sideband transmitter over there on the left, I built a Heathkit Seneca, bought the brand new Dream receiver. It was fascinating times for me. And I needed a bigger antenna. So the Motorola dealer close to me there in Southern Illinois, he and another fellow that was a contractor, they put up a 110-foot Roan for me. And we put a pair of J-beam stacked on top for 2 meters. But this is a 36-foot long Telerex spiral array. And this is at 110 foot. Now, here's the interesting part. And we're going to get into this really good here in just a few minutes. Your signals do not stay in the plane. They'll leave your antenna. They might turn over 3 or 4 times before they get to you. And in doing that, when it's totally 90 out, huge phase distortion because it's out of phase and it's the fading. And you think, well, power went down or what? Nope. It's all about polarization. And what Telerex did, they came out with a thing called the spiral array. Not all of them were horizontal. Not all of the elements were vertical. And it really helped. So I was one of the first to have that. I really enjoyed that. It really helped the signals, both transmit and receiver. I needed more power, though. So in 1959, I bought a 6-2 Thunderbolt, kilowatt and a half on 6 and 2 meters. And I built that from a kit. Of course, Larry was helping me along the way. I'd take it up and have him check it out once in a while. You just be careful, kid. That 3,500 volts will kill you. I get a call one day from Bob Drake of the Drake Company. He said, "Are you the guy that's got that kilowatt and a half on 6 meter sideband?" I said, "I am, sir." He said, "We'd like for you to visit our club meeting. We do this annual. And it's a technical meeting, like for you to bring pictures and diagrams and all of that, and tell us how you did that, because we discovered through the ARRL you're one of just 10 that they can find it's on 6 meter sideband." Little did I know. I had a friend of mine, another ham, he had a Bonanza airplane. So I've heard about this thing. So we flew to the Biltmore Hotel. They had taken all the furniture out of one of the floors. And they had the Collins room, the Hallicrafter room. Carl Mosley was there. Wes Shum that brought sideband to amateur radio. What an incredible guy he was. And a lot of people would say, well, it was Art Collins. Nope, he was 6 years late to the party. In fact, he bought one of Wes Shum's sideband kits to learn how he did it. But while I was there, the J-Beam company said, "Hey, we're looking for somebody to help us with some tests on a new antenna. Would you mind putting this up and doing some tests?" Heck no. So they sent it over from the UK. It was 128 elements on 2 meters. Again, the Motorola dealer and the contractor we had a spare lot beside our home. So I was looking like CNN North because all of these different antennas, but my parents, they loved it. They were not into electronics. They didn't have to spend any money to do it. And they knew I was having fun and learning something. So that was the beginning of Bob Heil. But there were some bands around the Southern Illinois. I'd heard about this guy that had a soldering iron. I was not into any kind of music other than theater organ. I ate, slept, breathed it because I was playing it. So what do? These kids had come in with their amplifiers, and one came in one time, and it was the first guy, and I said, what is this? He said, "You fix things here?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, it's broke." I said, "What is that box?" "Well, that's my guitar amp." I'd never seen one, never really knew about them. I know that's kind of crazy with my life afterwards, but I was a dead in the wool theater organ, Wurlitzer pipe organ. And so with my ham radio background, I turned it upside down. It had a pair of 6L6s and it had a 5U4 wait a minute, that's the modulator in my Harvey Wells. And that Harvey Wells is still with me. It's right over there. And I just love fixing things. And we fixed him up and got him going. And the word got out. And guys were coming to me like crazy with all kinds of things. And so I figured maybe we ought to do something about this. And so we did. I started building sound systems. The Fox had thrown out some of their big Olsen bins, and there's two large cabinets. We resurrected those, and had a friend that had a fiberglass shop. We built some fiberglass horns and some other mid-range cabinets. That's just one side of the PA. Macintosh amplifiers. I mean, I didn't know much about it, but we learned pretty quickly. My first little job from one of the St. Louis producers was going to bring him in was Jimi Hendrix. And I got to tell you, I'd never heard anything like that, but I knew what was going to happen, and we started building and building and building. And next thing you know, we had all kinds of superstars coming into St. Louis. First, the people came in from Nashville. The Grateful Dead came into town. Didn't have a PA one night. We did that. This is quite a story, and there's what I'm doing right now. I come back to some of the meetings. I can spend hours just on this segment of my life. But that night, they had never heard a PA like that, big stuff. And so the Grateful Dead were they were so amazed. How'd you learn to do this? Well, with ham radio. And Jerry Garcia and I became very, very good friends. He'd fly out to my home. He was there 3 or 4 times. He'd just sit and talk to me because he was learning things, and so was I. But we were talking about that Wallace sound that he was thinking of and so on. But there was a journalist there that night at that concert, and he wrote an article called "The Night Rock and Roll Sound Was Born." You can go to Google and you can read that, and it'll tell you the whole story. It was printed in Billboard magazine the next week, and oh my goodness, it really went crazy from there. We were doing all kinds of stuff, and so many groups, major groups that we helped in that next 10 years. We were the first company to do tours with semis, because when I got into it, these bands would come in with Volkswagen vans and pickup trucks, and half of them wouldn't get there at the right time. Oh, it was amazing. But you're looking at a guy that I have never tasted beer. I have never smoked anything. And for gosh sakes, never did drugs. So I was the straightest guy that they're ever going to see, but they respected that. Pete Townsend always put it cool. They start passing all their drugs. He said, leave him alone, man. He's got a soldering iron and he makes it sound good. And he can drive the truck. And I did in the beginning. But this wasn't going to happen with pickup trucks. And so we were the first company. I leased a 40-foot semi and a licensed driver, bought an old Greyhound bus and had all the diesel engine and the drivetrain all checked. And we built 11 beds in there, and away we went. But it was quite amazing in those days. I got a call one day from a guy. He was a manager of a new group. He said, listen, I hear you got a big PA. I said, well, yeah, it's sizable. Well, I got the loudest band you've ever heard. You think you can help them? I said, well, I think so. After the Who, I mean, come on. And this was their first night of their first tour, and nobody ever guesses who they are. That is ZZ Top without beards. In this day, we're still friends, and so sad to lose Dusty. Oh my goodness. Dusty's in the middle. He was a bass player. An interesting little thing about the boys. Billy Gibbons and Dusty had beards. The drummer, Frank Beard, had no beard. Just a little thing to think about. Well, as I say, we could be here for hours. We're going to move on because I want to get into so much. What really ended all of that after about 12, 13 years was I started doing a lot of rock festivals, and they were something. Yeah, we had the equipment to do them more than anybody, and we did them very, very well. But the situation is that I got pretty tired of seeing a lot of this. And so after all of these people I helped, I said, oh boy, I wrote the book. Nobody had anything written about how to do this. And there were a lot of young guys wanting to become sound engineers. Where do you go? Colleges weren't teaching. Who's doing it? So I wrote the book, and it was incredibly easy to read, very simple. And it was of great help to so many, the practical guide for concert sound. Along the way, I had met Joe Walsh. We were with him with the James Gang and on with so many very, very dear friends, even up to, of course, today. I built the talk box for him. There's another thing, but have me come back. I'll tell you the history. It's an amazing history. I gave one to Peter Frampton for a Christmas present. You can write the rest of Peter Frampton's history with that talk box. There he was on the last concert he played. He is no longer touring. We're still really good friends. But during all of this, I got a call from Paul Klipsch. Paul Klipsch is the father of audio. I answered the phone. He said, "That you, Heil?" And I said, "Yes, sir. Who's this?" "It's a Klipsch here." I said, "Oh," he was a crusty old guy. I'm going, whoa, this is God on the other side of this phone. "What can I help you with, sir?" "I want to come and see that sound system. You got a 10,000 watt PA?" "Yes, I do. I have several of them. I want to come and see it." So he did. Flew his airplane up. And the next day was like unbelievable for Bob Heil. He first of all, he was much taller than I. And he would say, "Why'd you do this?" "Well, where'd you learn to do that?" And it was always questioning me about how I learned to do this. And I said, it was all ham radio. Ham radio. Wow. It was all I knew. I barely made it. I didn't tell you this part, barely made it out of high school. I only went the required number of days, and I had horrible grades, just enough to pass because I was making money as a kid playing the theater organ. But he was so gracious, and he just wanted to know how in the world anybody could learn to do all of this. So we talked all day long, showing him all of the things, got in his airplane, little Bonanza that night, and flew down to Hope, Arkansas. That's where his home was. And that's an old telephone exchange building that became his laboratory. That's the K-horn. If you don't know the history of the K-horn, it really was something. He was the father of the hi-fi movement in the 50s. And Paul, he was so knowledgeable about a lot of these things. But he turned me on to the studies of the Bell Labs. This is where you want to get out your pencils, and this is why I came tonight. You see, the early telephone systems didn't work well. They were mushy. They had no clear speech articulations. What to do? Because when they put two wires, it started in New Jersey, and every 500 miles across America were relay stations to keep up the voltage, keep the audio up. Everything was good. So when you got to the other end of the line, hopefully it would look like this, but it didn't. It didn't. What it sounded like was like this. All I'm doing is removing one thing. I removed 2.5K 2.5K is a very, very interesting mid-range where all the speech articulation is. And if I take it out, as you hear, it's really mushy. So what do? Well, what they did, they didn't have anything to do. They had to go back to the scientists. I'm going to put it back. All I'm doing is turning up 2.5K. And you will notice how much more articulate and easy it is to understand. Let me do that one more time while we're here. I love explaining this to everybody because it's not heard about. You read that in your AWR manual. No, you don't. Why not? That's why I'm here. I'm going to turn it down. I just took 2.5 out. I'm going to bring it back. There it is at 1,000. There it is at 1,500. But when I hit 2.5, it's magic. It just jumps at you. The F and the S, the P and the B, the essence of sound. It's so spectacular. Without that 2.5 where it's flat, hey, that's what they wanted. They wanted it flat, buddy. They got it. But now when I turn it back, take it out, the essence of sound is gone. The difference of an F and an S, a P and a B, nothing like when we have 2.5 elevated. Well, they had a big job to do. This was the Bell telephone. They had 4,000 scientists, 4,000 of them. Think about this. They put all of them into this project. And the two leads were two guys. Gosh, I hope all of you knew these guys. Dr. Harvey Fletcher and Dr. Weldon Munson, the Fletcher-Munson curve. Wow. What they discovered is our ears are not flat. And it varies so much with level. Notice at the top. That's why kids like to listen to music loud. They hear all the bass, they hear all the mid-range, they hear all of the cymbals. But down here where you're listening tonight at 10 or 20, when I turned that EQ off, you heard what happened. Well, this, if nothing stays with you tonight, I please want you to take this with you. This is what they discovered. The human ear must have a rise at 2.5K for speech articulation. I just proved that to you. But now that they discovered it, what are they going to do? There wasn't anything like equalization. That word hadn't appeared. So they did it with high-pass filters. High-pass filter is a simple thing of a capacitor and a resistor. The audio goes straight through that capacitor depending on, and if you ever wanted to figure it out, I just get a bunch of resistors and capacitors and get a little resistance box. But anyway, the highs go through, the resistor takes it to ground. On the low-pass filter, it's the reverse. But now, that's how they fixed the system. They figured out they could have that rise at 2.5 and roll off everything outside. The telephone is only 300 to 3,000. Kind of sounds like ham radio today, doesn't it? Think about that. Well, there was a young man. Look how young he was. John Volkmann, he was working for RCA in the 1920s. We should put up statues to this guy. His job with RCA was to equalize motion picture playback systems. In 1930, the talkies were coming in. They needed audio and they weren't getting it because everything they had was looking like that. Nobody was thinking about equalization except for the phone company. So John he did this little project, a little experiment. He built some low pass filters, different varieties, high pass filters, and he could switch them around as he'd go into a theater to figure out what was going on. And they fixed it. It was done and over. That was it. Never heard any more about equalization. Now think about this. In the 1950s, hi-fi came in, but it wasn't anything really wild for equalization. I was very involved. I was a teenager and I loved my hi-fi systems, but I listened to George Wright theater organ records. Of course I was, but nothing happened. Not just pay attention to this. From 1920 of 1930 to 1967, there was no significant rise or any kind of talk about equalization. Think about it. Well, in 1967, the Langevin Company, they were known for recording products like mixers and analyzers and compressors. They brought the world the very first commercial equalizer. The little knob on the top, you could select the frequency and then you could boost or cut that. It was really, really something. My gracious, because we hadn't seen anything like this. And what was even crazier about all this kind of stuff is any of us that were doing sound systems in those days, all we had were little broadcast mixers. That little green one you see there, that's what I did Jimi Hendrix with. That's what I had for my system. That's all there was. And we had no EQ. We had nothing. That was it. That drove a whole bunch of Macintosh amps. Oh, it was loud and it was good. What I did was, of course, I learned to listen from those pipes, the days of the pipes, tuning and voicing all those by using different high frequency horns or splaying different low freaks. I did it all acoustically, but wasn't that great. But wow, here comes Langevin. Well, they also, the next year, introduced a mixer. Look at that. Whoa, 1968. This was something to behold. I go storming out to California and I wanted to see what was happening in their plant. And I bought 2 of these. I had a local carpenter build me a cabinet for it, a console, and big steel legs and rollers on it. I had 2 of those. So we had 16 channels. That box above it with the 2 meters, that was a compressor limiter. You talk about ahead of the time. Oh, buddy. But look over there. It's kind of interesting that when they took this picture, there was a little spotlight on it from the flash. That next year, after they had brought this to the world, they brought this. Oh, my gracious. Well, of course, when I bought the pair of AM4s, I bought one of those. You can imagine of Heil sound rolling into these big arenas where no one had ever seen anything like this or heard anything like it. So I was really, really having a lot of fun and making quite a name for us in that industry. And as I say, there's a whole night of things to talk about there, but this is where it kind of ends on that end. I had not been on the air for 12 years. And so I came back to radio and I'm going, oh my gracious. Oh, what in the world was I hearing? Because so much of this stuff, it was all distorted and bassy and mushy and it was awful. I go, what happened here? All this bassy, highly distorted audio. I didn't understand that. And I said, I think it's time for me go pay a little visit to John Volkman. Of course, I didn't do that. I was just looking at some of the papers that he had done. But it was time for me to talk about equalization. And I discovered it had never been done in ham radio. And so in 1982, I built the EQ200. Didn't realize what was going to happen here. Little 2-band EQ. I set the frequencies of the filters. This one was at 160, and you could increase or decrease, could cut or boost. The other one, that was the high frequency, 2.5K. Of course it was. And you could increase or decrease that. Well, I didn't realize what I had done. I did it for myself. I was on 40 meters every night. I got by the way, in 76, when I came back on, I went and got myself an advanced license and turned that into an extra later on. But I was on 40 meters for the first time in my many, many years as a ham. And I had a group, there were about 10 of us around the country. We get on 7240 each night. And I was doing all kinds of experiments with antennas and stuff. But they went nuts when I was putting the equalizer on and playing with it, because they were helping me figure out exactly what the frequency of the filters were. Yes, they were going to be plus or minus. Well, I wrote an article for QST, and I was going to pass it on. It was a do-it-yourself article where you could build it. All the parts were there. Everything was there. It was fine. However, it backfired. I started getting phone calls. I put my phone number in there. It was about 4 pages long, by the way. I started getting phone calls. Guys didn't want to build it. They wanted it right now. So I opened back my plant. I had closed it years back and building all the stuff for the rock and roll industry. And I hired back 2 of my great solder gals. And we started building the EQ200. And that was the first product for Heil Sound to enter the ham radio business. And I didn't understand how important that was. It was to me, but I didn't think anybody else would pay attention, because most people, if it's not in the radio, the microphone came with the radio, it's got to be good. Got news for you. They didn't build it. We're going to get into that in a minute. And so everybody really gets fooled with what's in that box. Well, this didn't fool a lot. They knew there was something happening. We built over 10,000 of those. In 1999, I get a letter from Dr. Inouye Communications, ICOM. He had a picture of his station. It had one of my equalizers, and it had one of my Gold Line microphones. This is the president, the founder. He was thinking of new radio line for ICOM, and I like your EQ. We want to put it in production. And so from the Pro 1, Pro 2, Pro 3, all the way through the ICOM line. Yeah, even here. Oh, boy. I love the little 705. They sent this to me to build a headset and adapters for, because it's got a very strange input. And so they're just about ready to hit the market. But if you don't know about this, it's a 7300, which is the most incredible radio. Did I say best? No, but it is really incredible. It does everything for not very much money. Sounds great. It has my equalizer in it, as all the other ICOMs, and so does the 705. So this is a fabulous little battery operated guy. I'm very fond of it. But here's the deal. They brought all the ICOM Pro 1s, Pro 2s out, but the guys weren't using, they were in default mode because they were afraid. Afraid of what? Because it didn't have very good instructions. And so that when I started really bearing down on our website. Under the support page, there's probably 50, 60 of them in there now. Everything is called All Things ICOM, All Things Yaesu, All Things Kenwood, All Things Elecrap. There, you go there, heilsound.com. And there's a lot of stuff in how to use your radio, and we're going to get into some of that. What do you do? How do you do this? Well, here's the deal. The first thing you want to do to any radio when you sit down is to figure out what we're going to do. We're going to do contesting. We're going to do net control. Or we just going to have fun and rag chew. You have to figure this out because you have to adjust the radio to do that. And let's do the rag chew, for instance. What's the first thing you do? You do the transmitter bandwidth, TBW, transmitter bandwidth. We're going to set this at 100 to 2900. Then we're going to go to the equalizer. We're going to roll off a little bit of the bass. You don't have to worry about the frequency. I did that for you. -2. The treble is at +3, just a little bit. You heard how important that is. I'll do it again while you watch it there. If you don't +3 it, this is what you have. That's what you got. But now I'm going to bring that back, and the essence of sound is going to really be the essence of sound just by that one control. But now what are you going to do if you're contesting? I know it's a difficult subject once in a while because a lot of people don't understand us. The most ridiculous sounding, oh, they're awful. They sound terrible. Why do you do that? Well, there's a good reason. You ask all the DXpedition, you asked Tim Duffy with the multi-million-dollar contest station that wins them all. Ask any DXer what he's going to tell you. They're there to be on top of the pileup. You think you're going to be on the top of the pileup if you sound like this? I don't think so. You're going to be stomped on pretty quick. So what are you going to do about it? Here's what we're going to do about it. We're going to adjust the transmitter for contesting. The first thing, what do? Set the transmitter bandwidth, 500 to 2500. Then you're going to go up to the base and roll it all off, -5 as much as you can. And you're going to increase that 2.5 as hard as you can, +5. Here's the reason. Here's the big answer to all of this for the contesters. I have a great demonstration. You probably will never forget this. You're going to say, what, a balloon? Yes. Let's think about air in here being RF. If you're rag chewing and we're out 100 to 2900, you know, we're stretching the RF pretty good. Got a little bit of rise at 2.5, as you remember. But for contesting, we shortened it up, didn't we? We rolled off 500 on the top end down to 2500, and we opened the door to 2.5. I mean, it is wide open. What happens to your RF? That's what happens to your RF. It's screaming at 2.5. It's terrible sounding. I came up with, right after the equalizer in 1984, I was asked by the North California DX Club to build them a DX headset with a DX element. And so I did. The HC4. You probably have heard about the HC4s. They're the most ridiculous sounding, most terrible sounding, but guess what? It puts all of your power right where you need it. And we sold, there's over at least 100 and some thousand of these out there. We're still building it, and we're using it now in our Pro 7, which is the ultimate headset. This is an amazing piece of equipment. Took me a couple of years talking to a lot of you, asking for things. There's several guys tried to copy David Clark, and it's just awful because they're not audio people. You asked me for something that you could have a balance. So if you have a hearing imbalance, you can balance the left to the right. It has interchangeable elements. If you want a rag chew, you got that. If you want a DX, you put this little guy in there. They're all interchangeable. Have one for the ICOM also. And this goes both ways and all that. One thing about all of our headsets, I read every once in a while a review. Heil headset, it hurts my ears. You didn't read the instructions. All of our headsets have a steel band inside the pad. So if you have a pinhead like me, there's what you do. If you have a bigger head, you're not going to break it. There you go. Very simple. But then the biggie. First of all, the speakers alone. Paul Klipsch taught me how to do this. I found a really good speaker, and we took it outside in free air to find out the resonance of that cone. And we build the inside of the enclosure to meet that, so there's no phase distortion with the speaker. I mean, it is a really great audio spectacle, and it's very soft. And you'd think it was going to be hard on your head. Nope, not at all. You hardly know it's there. My gosh, look at all the padding. But it comes to biggie. You ask for it. I put an output jack. So if you have a logger, or you just have somebody who wants to listen, you don't need a bunch of Y cords. You plug it in there. And then the big boy. We're the only company for the past, I don't know, I should look at it, but 12, 13 years easy, that have phase reversal. What are you talking about, Heil? Phase reversal in a headset. We're really going to get into that in just a little bit. You hear a pileup, and there's a little wiki back here. If you reverse the phase, you can move signals around in your head acoustically. So you have him in phase, put him out of phase, he moves up front. You can move him around in your head. It's an amazing spectacle, and we're the only people doing it. But you go ask any of the top DX contest guys, they're using our Pro 7s. They're really in love with the phase reversal. But all of these things are out there for ICOM, all their rigs. Some of them have different looks, but they're all there. -2, +3, they just have different graphics. They also asked me to build them a better microphone because they don't build their microphone. Well, it came in the box, Heil. Yeah, I know that, but they didn't build it, and they're pretty bad. All of them, all the companies. I don't know why they do that, because it all starts at the microphone. So we built this wonderful, what I call ICM, almost spells ICOM. Won't work on the Yaesu, won't work on the Kenwood. It's ICOM. It really plays big time and is very inexpensive. 1 year after this happened, Dr. Hasegawa, who owns Yaesu, his family owns Yaesu, he comes into my booth at Dayton and he says, I want to do it better. I said, well, what are we talking about here? Let's step out of the booth. He's a big guy. He said, I want to do that EQ thing. Well, okay. I said, the only thing better would be a parametric. That'd be good. Not so fast. What'd be the problem? Education. What mean? Well, you see, with the 2-band that I did, you don't have to do anything but plus or minus. You don't have to figure out what frequencies. With a parametric, it has 3 filters. 3. And you are the engineer. You have to tell those 3 filters what to do. You have to tell it the frequency. You have to tell it the bandwidth, audio bandwidth, and you have to plus or minus. You ready for this? Not 2, you have 9 buttons, and you have to know where to set each one of them. And for that reason, when The 9000 Yaesu, that was our first one with them, came on the market. A lot of them, and still even the new ones, are in default because it's their education was terrible. I go back and look at their books, all these graphs, they don't mean anything. I did it and I don't understand it. Here's how you do it. It's so simple. Take that top filter. I'm going to set it at 200, the frequency, because I want to get rid of that bass. You could set it at 100, but somewhere in there. 200, minus it. We're going to cut the bass a little bit, and the bandwidth of 2 octaves. Don't question it, just set it there. It's not a big deal at this point. What's the next one? 900. How did you know to set it there? Well, there's something about audio in between about 500, 800, 900. There's a real boxy sound. You do this to your ears, and you'll hear that boxy sound when you speak. And you want to get rid of that boxy sound. That boxy sound is centered right there. So set the frequency at 900 minus 3 or 4, 2 octaves of bandwidth. And boy, I hope if you don't know, I really failed earlier. You're going to set it at 2.5 and you're going to crank that baby to +8. Of course, you have to set the transmitter bandwidth. I usually set it at 200 to 3000. And there's one other thing about Yaesu. You have to push the program button, the EQ button, hold it in for about 3 seconds to save it, just like a computer, because it is a computer. If you don't save it, none of this works. And they asked me also to build the proper microphone, and I did. And not only did it end up for them, this has been the all-time favorite. This is an amazing microphone for the podcast guys and for amateur radio. I am very proud of this. It's a PR40 that I rolled the last octave off because a PR40 is so wide. I love it. And the other one, the one I'm using tonight, I really am partial to the PR22. It's on one of our lighted basses. And it has a 4 dB rise at 22K. You can hear it. The 2.5 is just, it's so articulate. And it has a balanced output. I was commissioned by Paul Rogers of Bad Company to build this for him. He wanted a microphone that his front of the house guy didn't have to EQ it because most of them don't know how to do that. He said that I didn't, but he's right. And so they don't have to do it. Like here, there's no EQ. But listen how beautiful this thing sounds. I usually use this on most of my rigs, but it all comes out to adjusting it. It's so important that we learn how to adjust it. We went through that a while ago. But one thing is, what do you do about mic gain? Well, I get on the morning, man. I call Bill and I say, hey, Bill, I'm okay. Yeah, okay. No, you're the engineer. You have a license from the FCC. You are a licensed engineer and you need to know. You need to learn how to adjust it. How do you adjust microphone gain? You do it very simply by watching the ALC meter. That's the only thing it's good for. I want somebody to tell me what ALC meter is good for other than mic gain. Nothing. When I first worked with Yaesu, the first rig was the 9000. And boy, did I get my way on that one. Parametric EQ. And I took the ALC meter off. And I put a meter on that says microphone gain. That's how you set mic gain. You see a 9000, or if you have one, oh, buddy, that's my primo rig, by the way. It has balanced input, not those funky little 8-pin Japanese, whatever they use. I hate them because they're unbalanced. For gosh sakes, talk about RFI. They're the real basis for a lot of RFI, unbalanced. We're going to maybe get time to do that. The front end of the 9000 has an XLR, just like every broadcast transmitter. All of them should have. And guess what they do? After I started working for all these guys, it's there, but you got to know how to wire that funky plug. And we do that. All of our mic cables are balanced these days. So these are things that you really need to spend time learning about. Bandwidth is important. Guys will have a transmitter that they're only 2.4 wide. Most of them will go to 2.9 today, but some of them don't. And so they buy a PR 781 or they buy a PR 40, and then they call me and say, "Oh, my microphone's broke. It doesn't sound good." Well, yeah, your transmitter, it's 2.4 wide. Your transmitter doesn't look like this. Oops. Your transmitter looks like that. It rolls off. So you're not going to get very beautiful audio out of it. And that's kind of sad because a lot of people don't know about that. But it's so important. There you can see that graph. 2.9 is nice. It's not big wide. It's respectable. But check out that 2.4. It rolls it off too hard. There's that DX element. Nothing under 500 cycles is worth anything. And it all pointed to 2.5. One thing that I always note to some of the guys is we all need a scope. And it's really sad that a lot of guys don't have a scope. I was at a ham fest, my first ham fest, man. My first ham fest in 2 years. We had a little ham fest here, about 400 or 500 people in St. Louis Saturday, and all my buddies were there. I'm on every morning on 3885 on AM, been there for years. And we all met. But anyway, I saw 2 scopes there and they were $30 a piece. These things probably cost at least $1,000 new. But here's one I bought. I think I paid $40 for this one, B&K. I also have a Tektronix that I paid $50 that costs about $2,000 new. Okay, smart brains. How am I supposed to do this? How do you hook it up? Oh, that's easy. Get out your soldering iron. Go to the internet. You can find a little box and 2 coax connectors, and you're going to take the center out of a piece of RGA and you hook the 2 together. It just goes straight through. Nothing changed. But you're going to tap the input connector with a voltage divider, 51K, 680 to ground. In the center of that is a 0.04 to the output to the scope. You now can have a scope to look at your signal and know what's going on. And it's just so important. The other thing is crazy. I hear them a lot. Guys sitting about 2 feet from their microphone. They get way back here and, well, just turn up the gain, Heil. No, then I sound like I'm in a roller rink. You go back to those scientists. I'm telling you, you've got to spend time. Go to the library and look at some of the findings of the Bell Labs. Pay attention. This is another biggie. Every time you double the distance of the source, you lose 6 decibel. Think about it. If you double your power, that's only 3 dB, and you're going to throw 6 of it away because you're trying to do this? No. Think about it. Just listen to how loud my audio gets when I get here. So I should be here. No more than 2 inches. No more. And so these are things that's why I'm doing these things, because I discovered that a lot of guys and gals, it's not out there for you. And what did I just do? You see, every human's voice exits air, and that air will drive the diaphragm down into the voice coil. Some have a lot of air, some not very much. But if you have it, you hear the pops, the P-pops. And I hear this too, and it drives me totally crazy. There's 2 ways to fix it. If you ever pay attention to newscasters, the big time guys and gals, they talk in the side of a microphone if you ever see it. A lot of times it's off camera. But with a proper microphone, your air goes this way and not this way. But you can't do that with very many microphones. I did it because of Joe Walsh. Joe asked me, he said, build me a microphone and I don't have to be stuck right here. I said, well, you guys, you know, you're all these guys using these things. He said, I don't care. And it's a pretty sick sound. I didn't touch anything. So for your great Shure fans, what happened to my audio? It all starts at the microphone. But here's the other deal. If I move off, it's gone. See you later. I got to be right here like you see them all the time. They can't get it. They get it in the back of their throat. They'd like it. That's ridiculous. And it's been that way for 70 years. Well, there's a few of them that got next to what we were doing. Now, I did the 22 for Paul Rogers after Joe asked me to do this, but look at the screen. I can move around. I can move a full 180 and it does not change audio at all. That's one way to get rid of it. But all of our microphones come with a windscreen. Now be careful. You go to Walmart and buy one for $1. That's not a good one. This is acoustically transparent, because I'll hear guys say, hey, Joe, take that stupid muff off. If it changes your audio, it's not acoustically transparent. These are made so that it does not change the audio spectrum. And it's very important. And so a lot of this stuff is on our website. I please ask you to go there. You're going to learn a lot. All things ICOM, all things Yaesu, all things Kenwood, all things Elecraft. Not a day goes by that I don't receive a number of emails from guys that have gone there and they've discovered a lot of things about their radios. And I talked to you a minute ago about the Power Focus. Probably never heard of Power Focus. A lot of people don't. I don't think Shure knows about it. Come on. And omnidirectional to them is all the way around it. No, we just want it on the front. Power Focus. So important. But all of our microphones are done properly. So many of them are out. This is the other division of our company. It's a big deal these days. We also have a custom shop. We can put your call on it. We put their names on it. And then you have Sirius Radio. We are one of the major microphone manufacturers in broadcast today. Sirius just bought 250 PR40s, tossed out their RE20s, and on, the recording studios. And just so many people, even Mickey Mouse has some of our stuff. We did the microphones. We were very much involved in the Last Man Standing. And that's one that I call it the Finn. Joe asked me, he said one day, hey, Heil, you need to build me a microphone that looks like the front end of a 48 Pontiac. So I did. That's a back view of it, but you kind of see it. And I just built it for him. I didn't know. And so I put LEDs in and it lights up. Oh, gosh. Hey, if you don't have fun, man, don't do it. But while we're here and to kind of wind up some of the microphone, and he wanted a microphone that would get rid of a lot of the rear rejection. He'd get rid of it because no microphone does that, especially Shure's and Electro Voices. So what are you going to do, Heil? Remember that big antenna I had? I learned a lot from the phasing of that. And I'm a nut for phased arrays. And the same can be had for microphones. And so I applied antenna theory, different frequency, exactly the same theory to microphone audio. How do you get rid of rear rejection? And what do you want to do there? Well, here's what I did for my good friend Joe. He wanted to have a microphone to get rid of all that nonsense behind him. So here's what I did. I'm going to unplug this. And here's another PR22. And here's another PR22. Yep, they're both alike, different color. They're both in phase. I just built a Y cable so I don't have another channel. We're not playing games here. This is science, baby. That's all I want to talk about is audio science. A lot of guys spewing a lot of nonsense of their product. No. So here's what I did. First of all, we were here. What happens if you have double your power? How many dB do you get if you double your power? 3. That's it. No more. I don't care what you do. If you have a 500 watt amp and you went to 1,000, it's 3 dB. Can anybody hear 3 dB? I don't know. Let's try it. Remember what I said earlier? Listening is a mental process. Listening. Please do this. If you really want to do it, close your eyes. I'm talking into both of these microphones at the same time. I'm going to take away 3 dB. This could be several $1,000s because the amplifier is not going to make any difference. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Wait a minute. I'm going to do it again. Here we are. 1, 2, 3. You couldn't hear it because the human being cannot detect 3 dB. It's just a scientific fact. I can get you 10 dB with the right microphone and the right equalization. Think about that. Well, this is where I came. I have a little magic plug. And 3 is to 2 and 2 is to 3. Of course, they're balanced and they sound just fine. The only situation is this guy is out of phase. I sound just like this one. Watch the screen. Another thing you won't forget. What happens when you take 2 signals out of phase? Nothing. They cancel. Nothing. This one is out of phase. The diaphragm comes up. This one in phase goes down. Put them together. It's so simple. Now I have some of these things I do. Let me change mine. For some of my return visits to the clubs, I spent a whole hour in phasing. It's the most important thing on ham radio, and you don't hear about it. Some idiot piles on top of your frequency you're listening to your buddies on. You push the notch filter. How does that work? It puts his signal out of phase. See you later. See, there's so many things that phasing controls. How did the carrier get deleted when Wes Shum brought single sideband the ham radio? How to get rid of that carrier? It's out of phase. How to get rid of the other sideband? It's out of phase. How does your Yagi work? And there's so many things. Well, why are we not hearing about this? It really bugs me. It really bugs me. But that's why I'm here. But here's the deal. Joe said, I want you to build me a microphone. I don't want to hear much from the back. And so I designed and we build the PR40. We're building thousands of them now because the broadcasters got to watch the gain on this thing because it gets crazy. This is a large diaphragm. It's the first ever. Sure tried it and failed. How do I know that? Their engineer, Bob Schuline, visited me in one of my stands at the music show right after we did this. You want to know how we did it? He said, we tried it and we failed. All of their stuff's 1/2 inch, 3/4, maybe an inch. RE20s, maybe 1.125 inches. This thing's 1 3/8 inches. It's huge. And I figured out how to do it. You got to tame it. It's like wings on a bird. It's going to fall down. Well, then if you build it back up, it won't receive any highs. We did it. Now I want to be able to do all of the things that I normally do to my microphones. And the broadcasters love this. You don't even know I'm moving it drastically. It's the way it should have been. But now what about that rejection? Watch the screen. This is a biggie for tonight. This thing has 40 dB of rear rejection. Here it goes. It's gone. Oh, it still works. But it's 40 down. 40. And to the broadcasters, it is just an incredible help. Because see, in a broadcast station, you see them, they got their boom and they got their PR40 and all. Right in front of them, about 6 or 8 feet, is a piece of glass that the producer's on the other side. You've seen some of these setups. Well, what happens when you speak, it goes into that glass, turns around and comes back out of phase, and you get all of this wishy-washy, and you got to try to equalize some of that. Why don't you just get rid of it? And so we do. That's why. That's exactly why you're seeing so many of the broadcasters use our PR40s today. The broadcast industry went crazy for it. But when Sirius got into it, I have to tell you, I was really blessed, stunned, because I always figured that we were last on the totem pole, but rose to the top pretty fast. But I love the PR40. How'd I get rid of it? I'll show you how I did it. Every other microphone, RE20, condensers, all these things, they have 4 little holes, little 1/8 inch holes. 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. That's the only entrance they have to get their out of phase stuff. Well, that's stupid. You're the $1 million engineers. I'm just a kid that barely made it through high school, but I sure learned a lot from my mentors in ham radio. And one of them was Wes Shum and Paul Klipsch. Well, here's how I did it. I opened up the entire bottom of this element, not 3 little holes. I set it on a shock mount on top of what I call a signal collection tube, and 360 degrees around come in the mids, the lows, the highs, and we're getting, as you saw demonstrated, 40 dB a rear. And it really, really plays. A lot of guys, I never intended for it to be used in ham radio, because it's broad. It's the only dynamic microphone that gets down to 28 cycles out to 18K. And that's way, way difficult to tame on ham radio, but a lot of guys using it. So, okay. And thank you. But you have to really tame it to make that happen. But let's, I know time is getting away, but it's another 2 hours. Let's cut it down to 10 minutes. Let's talk about antennas, another one of my very, very favorite subjects. Mic back together. Here's the deal. Antennas work because of phasing. We talked about that Yagi. Hey, when Dr. Yagi invented this antenna. He didn't have any kind of computers and modeling, whatever that is. He had a field strength meter, a bunch of aluminum, and a driven element that was resonant on a frequency. And he started going out eighth wave, quarter wave, all that in front by different links. And one of those particular situations gave him some gain. Oh, no batteries needed. Did the same behind, and in the right spot and a longer element, he could get rejection because it was out of phase. Aha. And that's how your Yagi works. You can do these with verticals. It's all about quarter wave, half waves, and you reverse the phase. And what's simple about it is the transmission line has to be half wave. Here's a little better one of a dipoles. This is really incredible. Come back some night and play some real live signals to let you hear this thing. The down leads have to be exact for 75 meters, 126 foot. They have to be 64 apart, 64 high. But look what happens to that red line. That's the delay line. We had that over here, but here I did it in red. And when you have a remote switch, when you put it to the left, you're going to be pointed to the East Coast. Put it to the right, that other is delayed. And that's how you can get front to back. It really works. I did it with a remote switch box. This was a Maritron. I also, on my 40 meter one, I have one from DX Engineering, but I don't like rotary switches. I hate them. So I go to Antique Electric Supply. If you've never been to their website, I want you to go there. They have got some of the most important things. And you think, oh, you can't get that. Heck, you can't. They've got it all. And I bought some Les Paul guitar switches from them, and I replaced my rotary switches. And so for 75 meters, I go east, I go west. 40, I go east to west. Pretty cool. The console behind me here, I switch all the regular antennas, and the colored ones switch to relays for the different radios. There's 35 relays behind me. I do a whole show on that too. But it's just so much fun to be able to play with antennas. But here comes the biggie of the night. Please pay attention. A publication from Collins Radio states most transmitting antennas of resonant dimensions elevated at a quarter wave above ground are as close to 100% efficiency as possible. And in order to really make it play, we want to do both rays. You see, antennas have two rays. They have the one you see, the wire, the dipole, but it also has a reflected ray. And that reflected ray travels further by the distance of B and C back there. That's considered the reflected image of the antenna. Now, if you can get those together, now you have something. You can, again, play with that eighth or quarter wave, and away you go, because they will merge. I did a thing when I first got my license in 76 to work 40 meters. I did this every night with a bunch of guys, and it was really remarkable. I wanted to play with antennas. So I had a reference dipole, and to me, there's nothing like a dipole. That's it. Resonant dipole. Now you want to do phase dipoles. Now we're talking, but I had it was just a regular 40 meter dipole. And every night we could compare to that. See, putting up an antenna and asking your friend, hey, Biz, the antenna better? You don't know. antennas and atmosphere changes all the time by the minute. But now we can reference it. I put up a 40-meter dipole, 33-foot side. Okay. I had it first at 20 feet. We did the reading, had it at 30 feet, had it at 40, 50. Guess what? Most of those were pretty much the same. Then I come back one night and I did, 33 foot. And immediately there was a very nice increase from my reference at 33. The next night I took it to 66. Oh, buddy, you don't hear about this stuff. What's wrong? They write all these antenna books and they're like this. I don't read this stuff. But I'm telling you, I prove it. I prove it every day when I get to play around and have fun with antennas. But that resonant dipole is something. I have a lot of things over my years of playing with them. I hate pulleys. Pulleys they're a scourge. Don't ever use pulleys. They're going to freeze up. Then they get caught in the rope. No, use carabiners. They make a locking carabiner. Oh man, now that is the way to do it, because you will never have it freeze up on you. I make my own center insulators out of fiberglass or plexiglass. Just drill 4 holes and away you go. And I like to do fan dipoles. That's kind of fun. My all-time favorite dipole, though, is the MIT Coaxial Dipole. This is it, baby. In 1938, they were commissioned by the government to build a broadband radar antenna for 75 meters. And this is it. There's a lot of stuff, all these bazooka, I hate the word. And no, it's not an MIT. You have to do their calculations, and it's all out there. Go to my website, go to my QRZ page. You can find it. But the deal is, I make mine out of all RG58. I don't use twin lead on the ends. I use 58. What that does is that gives you a little bit more bandwidth with twin lead, but I'm okay with RG50. It's a lot easier. And the way you go, but it's got to be 0.66 velocity factor. A lot of people don't realize velocity factor really means a lot, but that's really great. And we did slopers and all kinds of other things. And so we just don't have time to go through all of these, but I got to tell you my deal here. This house never had, all the other antennas are at home we have in the Ozarks, but this house is hardly 100 foot long, and I don't have room for antennas. But I want to put up a 75-meter resonant dipole. It's going to be 125 foot long, right? Across the street from me, we're talking about a major street, is a lady that her husband, who's deceased now, sadly, was a ham. So she has a lot in her heart. She loans me her tree. And so we launched with a potato gun. We launched it up at a 70-foot tree and into my 70-foot tree. And I use this. This is kind of a secret little deal. Wire. It's this MFJ wire. You can hardly see it, but oh man, look at it. It's 7 strands. You can pull your car with this stuff, and it really plays. But here's the deal. Can you see it? No. Every day I can see where the rope's tied on it. That's about it. Every day I go out, I look again, I can't see it. But just all kinds. And in closing all this, there's so much I bypassed, but this is so much fun. One of my friends in Kansas City wanted to put an attic antenna, but he did the 4080 one. He wanted to do one that would do 2 meters to 80 meters in his attic. And he did. Look what he did. This is amazing. And here's how it looks. Pulled all the resonant dipoles. He has worked over 100 companies. And for all of the doom and gloomers, you want to argue with this, they're all very flat, with the exception of the 6 and 2 meter one. They're very sharp. Of course, he only wanted it on his 51.7 where the repeater, where he received repeater stuff. So there again, these guys are thinking. And for all you, I gotta have flats, gotta be SWR. Well, here, put your dummy load on your tower and you'll have very flat SWR. I'm telling you, when I first got into ham radio for 30 years, I never owned one, and I don't pay much attention now. If you have resonant dipoles or any kind of antenna, you don't have to worry. Okay, so it might be 3-to-1, worst case on the edges. It still doesn't matter. Yeah, if it's 5 or something, yeah, but no, it's just kind of crazy. And I never want to see any of you doing this. Somebody sent me this picture. Oops, that's not me, and I hope it's not you. And one last thing is, what do you do about coax connectors? Remember, I had this engineer, I met him 2 weeks into ham radio from KMOX. He taught me how to put coax connectors together. He said, you can't be guaranteed that soldering through those little holes, solder all of the shield. So here's how you do it. You do it on the outside. Solder the center in. Cut those all out nice. You want to tin the connector before anything starts, and 10 minutes later, then solder this on. You can do it with RG58 also, only you do it with the adapter. Again, you do the adapter for 10 or 15 minutes before you want to get a nice solder on it. Otherwise, you'll melt the inside, but you won't this way. And it just works so good. And I always was very, very embarrassed. I never showed anybody this because I taped it up until, I don't know, 6-8 years ago, I visited Tim Duffy. He is the guy. Couple $1 million contest station. He has 11 stations. You know about Tim. He wins it all. I look over in the corner and here's all of his coaxes. I don't know how many there are, but it had to be 70 or 80 of them. And I looked again and I went over there so I could get a little closer look. Every one of Tim Duffy's coaxes are done like that. And then I told him, I said, I've always been embarrassed by this. And I told him why. He said, well, you don't want to talk about it because most of the doom and gloomers will tell you you're crazy. But he said, you cannot guarantee me. He did the same thing. You can't guarantee all through those little stupid holes. Whoever thought of that? What planet did you come from? And how do you get coax inside your house? Drill a thing in the window? No. Before we put any tile down here, I put a toilet flange. You screw it down, and then the tile went over it. It works great. This is really super stuff. And it's just thinking, just thinking. But there's so much more. And I'd like to get into the Pine Board project. Some of you might read about it. I could come back and do a whole hour on that, but there's so many guys built the Pine Board project. There's a guy put one in the cigar box. There's one that built it in his child's lunch box, on and on and on and on. We always want to remember about high voltage. I also like to mention this. I'm a major AM operator, have been for 65 years. There's an AM window. It's been there since somewhere around 49 or 50. When the sidebanders first came in, oh, buddy. So they all got together and did a gentleman's agreement in 1960. 3870 to 3890 is the AM window. And so you want to pay attention to that. You see, AM, we're all crystal controlled. We can't move. Sideband, of course, it's a transceiver today. You can move anywhere. And there's so much more room on 75 meters than that little bitty space. So please pay attention and respect AM windows, 7290 to 95. And so, that there's so much more there. Last but not least, go to my website, because I've run totally out of time, or I would let you hear this. Listen to the parametric receive audio system. I am getting such rave reviews. This is an amazing product that nobody's ever done anything close, but it sure helps anybody having a hearing loss, a hearing imbalance, or just plain trying to dig things out of the pileups. Because again, we're able in receive, instead of it sounding like that, the pileups sound like that. No, it's not pretty, but you can understand what they're saying with your receiver. So you see that's a very big move forward. And we're very proud of this product. I wrote the book a few years back. I didn't write it. I compiled it. These are notes from my KMOX engineer friend, Paul Klipsch, the 4,000 scientist, all of these wonderful guys that I learned from as a child and still learn today. You really want to pick up on this. It's available from our web store. Our dealers have them. If you get it from our web store, I'll sign it for you. And this one is, you can download this free. Just go to my site, heilsound.com. Download that. A lot of information. It all starts at the microphone. And last but not least, a few years back, Heil Sound was invited to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We're the only manufacturer in the Rock Hall. That's the mixer we built for Quadrophenia for the Who, power amps we built. That's a ZZ Top's mixer we built for them, the talk boxes in there and other things and so on. And very, very honored by that. And a few years back, I received an honorary PhD from Mizzou University for music and technology. Again, you're looking at a kid that barely made it through high school. But I learned it all from ham radio. I'm really not kidding you. But I love all of the things that are happening in ham radio today. And I hope that people can learn to build. One of the really good things that's out there today is the QCWA. If you've been licensed for 25 years, please join this. Doesn't cost very much. There's some big movements happening in the QCWA. And you want to look into that. I bet you have some questions and I might be able to answer. Jonathan, thanks for having me.
Okay, so I got a question for you. You were talking about how SWR meters are useless and that the important thing to do is to make sure you have a resonant antenna. How is it that I am meant to determine whether or not my dipole that I just built is actually resonant? The tool that I have, the antenna analyzer, tends to give me a graph of SWR over my band of choice. What's the better tool for the job, if not an SWR meter, in your opinion?
That's what these little guys are for. Everybody needs to have, this is more important than an SWR meter. Well, it is, I guess, but you can tell right where your antenna is. I don't care about the standing waves. It's coming back down. If it's resonant, there won't be any. And you can do that with one of these. And there's all kinds. MFJ's got one. This is Comets. And there's all kinds of really spectacular ones today. Yeah, that's how you do it.
What is the name of that tool exactly?
Oh, this is a Comet. And it's a CAA 500.
Okay.
And I'll tell you another way. Oh, the old timers are I'm going to get flamed on this one, but it works. You have a solid state transceiver? Is your transceiver solid state?
Yes, it is.
Okay. What is it?
I have a Yaesu FT 450D.
Okay. Has an SWR meter in it, right?
It does indeed.
Put about 20, 30 watts of carrier in it. So the meter's registering. Run up and down the band. I know you're not supposed to do this, but you will find that when it's resonant, it'll be maximum power.
Mhm.
Nothing simpler. And it works. Been doing it for all these years. But nothing beats a good old analyzer. That's how you do it.
Okay, thank you for answering my
Yeah.
question. Anybody else
Okay.
have questions? Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, Bob, I was going to ask the wiring of your coax dipole. I don't know if you've got that slide again, whether you could pull it up and clarify what's connected to what on that. That looked like some
You're
things.
talking about on the phased array?
You had a coax dipole.
Yeah. Oh,
One of the most
yeah.
recent ones.
My very
The
favorite
bits on the
antenna.
end that looked as though all the bits on the end were shorted out, which might be right.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to
they are.
clarify exactly what was connected to what on that.
Let me run that back here. Oh, I love this antenna. It's great. Here's what happens. You use RG58 0.66 velocity factor. And for 75 meters, it's going to be a total length of 118.08. Now that's for 3750, but you know, the whole thing. Okay. And that's the A, that's end to end. The B, they get shorted at the B point. You actually short the center and you short the shield of the antenna itself and the twin lead or the tail. In fact, I've done them with just a piece of wire hanging out there. You could use a piece of wire, twin lead, 58, whatever. But the length of that twin lead, you have to play around with it a little bit. That'll help you extend the bandwidth a little bit. But you see, it's just one piece. Take the lower one. It's one piece of 58 all the way through. You break the shield in the middle. You do not break the center conductor, and you connect the shield to the left to the shield to the right. Can you see that okay?
Yeah, I think so. So you are shorted at the ends, both ends of B, I guess.
Yeah.
But you're also shorted in the center conductor, right where your feed line joins it as well.
Oh, not where the feed line is. Oh, no.
In the middle, underneath where it says B, right underneath B. Is that not connecting?
Oh, no. That isn't shorted.
Sorry, to clarify, you have your feed line going left and right, but you also have the center conductor going straight through at B.
Yeah, that's right. You got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The center goes all the way through, and you break the center so you can get to the shields left and right, so to speak, and that's what you feed.
Okay.
And the only downside of this antenna is you have really lessened the strength of it because you cut that shield. So you have to build a real nice center conductor. Got it? Okay. Oh, you'll enjoy it. It's a great antenna. Yeah. Excellent. Anybody else?
I've got a question about organs, Hammond organs.
Yeah.
So I had a Hammond B3.
Oh, do you still have it?
No, I wish I did. I wish I did. But in the early 70s, the keys would fail because of a little copper springy bit in there that connected that was part of the switch in each key. And I wound up having to open up a lot of them and kind of solder them back together, butt them and solder them. Did you have problems with your keys on your Hammonds?
No. When I first opened my music shop, oh my gosh, I must have sold at least 2,000 B3s. I was the biggest B3 dealer because I only bought the consoles. I didn't buy the pedals or the bench because I was selling them to rock groups. Hammond organ really came down on me. You got to buy the whole thing. I said, no, I don't. I have a stock number, buddy. I was ahead of them. No, I've never heard that. And I have done so many things of my own. I built a 3-manual B3 that I played in the restaurant for about 6 years. I have all kinds of different things. I've never heard that ever. I'll be darned. That's strange. Weird. What years were that?
I don't know when it was built, but I think I got it in the right around 1970. Used.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That could have been at the end of the run when KWARC took it over. They didn't even sound like B3s to me. I'll be darned. Did you play?
No, I don't play very well at all.
Oh, my B3 turned into this.
Wow.
That's about 20 feet in front of me here in this new studio.
Wow.
So I've been playing the theater organ since I was a kid, as you learned earlier. And I play every day. I'm doing a lot of organ things on Zoom, organ clubs and things. But back playing in the theater again. We play in between the shows at a couple of different theaters here in the St. Louis area. I love to play. Okay. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Okay.
Actually, 2 questions. First of all, what company actually made the Hammond organ?
Lorenz Hammond. I'll give you a history. This is a cool thing. In 1929, right in the middle of the Depression start, right? He figures out, what can I do? And so he invented the synchronous motor. You're going to say, big deal. It was a huge deal. He built the first electric clock because his synchronous motor never varied, okay? And there were thousands. I have probably, I must have 150 of them, all different shapes and so on, of Hammond clocks. You ever go to an antique store or something, look around, you find a Hammond clock, it's worth some money. Okay, 1929. He made it through the Depression selling clocks, electric clocks. I saw one of his ads on it, and it showed this clock plugging it into the wall. No more winding a clock. Okay, 1932, he took that synchronous motor and built a card table. You drop the cards in there, and it shuffled those cards, and it was a bridge table. And they sold several thousands of those things with a synchronous motor. He was not a musician. He was an engineer. And one of the guys working in his plant, putting the card tables together, which I have one of those too, he says, if we could take a wheel, look like a silver dollar, with the little flowered edges, and put that on a shaft, it would be steady because it was synchronous. It would never change. And we would put a magnet with a coil of wire on it. We could get a tone. You put 91 of those and you call it a B3. Is that a piece of history or what?
Yeah, it is. That's interesting.
The first one was a BV. Actually, it was a BC. I'm sorry, but there was basically a B3, and I'm just amazed at how many of them are still out there and playing. They're worth more money than ever today. We're still servicing those. I don't do it, but some of the guys know because I'm a B3 nut, and so they'll come to me and I'll help them a little bit. Well, I hope that was a good story for you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have a second question. I have a Tentec Orion 2, which is a great radio, has great audio too. I use a model 708 microphone,
Mhm.
in which the switch is starting to fail. I contacted Tentec. They don't even sell the part.
No.
You have to buy a new microphone. I contacted the company who manufactures that microphone. They don't even give me the courtesy of answering. What is the best microphone that you actually have? Do you
I
have?
don't know. Tentac's one of the companies I never dealt with. They were very arrogant, and they really thought they were the catch meow, and so they wouldn't. Any of the people that tried to help them or build things, they didn't want to hear about it. And so I didn't have much to do with them. There's a story. They did hire Dick Smith, who worked for Collins, and they wanted this new radio. It was going to be the Orion 1.
Mm-hmm.
He hired me to work with him because he knew about this. And so he built the prototype. It had an XLR. It had balanced microphones. Everything was really cool. Had an equalizer. Had a 3-pin XLR. And so they took it to Al Kahn, who started the company. And he said, I don't want this. Get rid of it. Go back to my 4-pin CB connector and you are fired. And he fired Dave. That was insane. I can't imagine where Tentec would have been had they had this Colin engineer show him the way, as Peter Frampton would say. That was sick.
That's interesting. I bought the hand mic from them. It looks like physically the same as what you have there. It has an XLR connector on it. And on the end of that cable is an 8-pin coaxial type connector.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I just thought maybe there is a different microphone that you have that
I don't
probably works. Yeah.
I'm sure that we could wire the ICM because it's an electret.
Yeah.
It's a very cheap electret.
Yeah. Well, this actually is a dynamic microphone.
It's what, the 705?
708.
708.
708 is a dynamic microphone.
I thought they were all electrets. That's why I'm very misfired on it because of the preceding.
No, but it's a dynamic 600 ohm.
You need to put a PR22 on it. It's got a lot of output and it really plays.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Well, this has been fun tonight. And I do a lot of these things and then I come back. One of the clubs are coming back for the 4th time here next week. We pick out a subject and spend an hour just on the fine board or an hour on equalization or whatever. So if you want to do that, let me know. I'm here for you. I just love to share this hobby because it is this hobby that put me where I am today. And I want to be with you guys. So let me know. We'll be there. Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Bob. It's been great to hear your stories. Your enthusiasm is just awesome. I really, really enjoyed the presentation.
Well, I appreciate that.
Thank you again for coming.
I have 2 ways to end these. I can go over here and hit the button and we'll end it very nicely and I'll walk out the door. Or before I walk out the door, I'll spend about 2 minutes here and play you a little ditty on the organ. You tell me what you want to do.
Yes.
Oh, come on. I want to hear that thing.
Yeah,
Yes,
please.
Yes.
Okay. We can do that.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, organ.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't have it all set up to do that, but now I do. So 7-3, everybody. It's been fun. Let's do it again. There's so much we can go through and talk about.
Absolutely fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Bob. 73.
Thank you. I think we're all okay.
Didn't even realize that was a live shot.
So many buttons. It's like a spaceship.
That's a lot of buttons.
Wow. Every meeting should end like that, Bob.
The noise that thing makes is fantastic.
Isn't that something? Holy cow. Oh, well, with that, I guess the KWARC meeting's adjourned.
Yeah.
Very-
Thanks very much, guys. Have a great
Truly
evening.
fantastic. Thanks.
Yeah.